Let's look at most difficult part of your statistics curriculum, which is a p-value. A random sample of students is taken from each country that takes part in maths test. The table below shows the mean score, the standard deviation for this sample from 3 of these countries, X, Y, and Z. It also shows the size of the sample. And we can see the mean score for each country, the standard deviation, and the size of the sample. So let's have a look at this particular part. For country-wise, so we are talking about these values here. Researchers carried out a hypothesis test at 5% level of significance to see if the population mean score of the country was different to 400, which is the worldwide mean. So the null hypothesis was that the mean score for the Y country was 400. And that's basically the way it always goes with the null hypothesis. With the null hypothesis, we are saying nothing changed. It is the same. Doesn't matter. The sample does not say that, or not the sample, whatever we've done, whatever we've introduced, there is no change. And then the alternative is exactly the same, but opposite. The alternative hypothesis was that it was not 400. So the mean score was not 400. So that's your alternative hypothesis. Using values from the table, work out the test statistic, the z-score of the sample mean for the country Y for this test. Give your answer correct to 2 decimal. So when we are talking about this z calculation, that is the second formula in our table that has to do with z-score. The first formula that we use is the simple version, here page 34. And then on page 35, we have the second formula for the z-score, and that's when we have the sample mean, the standard deviation, and the population and the sample size. So that's simple, only replacing letters with numbers. So that is the sample mean. So the mean score is 403 for country Y, minus that is the mean of the population, which is 400, divided by standard deviation. Standard deviation for Y is 70.6, so 70.6, and that is divided by the size of the sample, 2724. 2724. Okay, and then we put that in the calculator and we press equal, to 2 decimal, we get 2.22. Now, the second part. Hence, work out the p-value of this test and state the conclusion. So work out and conclusion of the hypothesis test in the given context, making reference to the mean score for country Y. So, okay, what is the p-value? What does that mean? So p-value is about the fact that I am looking at the result of the sample and I'm saying, well, should I get the result of the sample? What is the probability, because it is a probability, of me getting the result from the sample the same as from exactly the same as from the whole population? So, for example, in this case, we are talking about worldwide mean. Okay, so let's say we are talking about that they have asked 1 billion 1 billion students, right? Oh, sorry, I wrote too many zeros. 1 billion students, they asked, and they got 400. They added results of 1 billion. So 1 billion numbers added divided by 1 billion, and it gave them 400. And now we are saying that if we take a sample of 2,000, we're going to get the same exactly results like from 1 billion. Obviously not. We should get our result should be different if we are only looking at 2,000. Okay? I'm not saying it has to be very different, but we should get a slightly different result. So that's the idea really of the p-value. Okay, so how do we do that? Listen, we are looking for probability. Now, the difference here between our usual calculation is that this is the sample mean. Z is this formula. It's not the small, simpler formula for the z-score we are using. And then when we're going to read probability, because the process is the same, from the mean score to z, which we already have from this part, so we have the z 2.22, we go to the table, we read probability, but that probability is not our answer. So to find p-value, what we do is from 1, we take the probability that we read from the table, and then we multiply by 2, because p-value is that little value at the end. It's the little tail thing. That's the reason why we are multiplying by 2. Okay, so let's apply that knowledge here. So we have 2.22 for z. Now let's go to the table and find what is the probability for that z. So 2.2 and 2, 9868. Okay, 98, so 0, 9868. And that's my 1 minus and multiply by 2. And we put that in the calculator and we are getting is 2.64%. So our touchstone when it comes to the p-value, if p-value is greater than 5%, we fail to reject. So we don't reject the null hypothesis, the null hypothesis stand. If that p-value is less than 5%, we reject null hypothesis. Okay, so 5% is our threshold. So here we've calculated the p-value, and now we have to conclude. So our value is what? Less than 5%, isn't it? So as p-value is less than 5%, therefore we reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, what the alternative stands. So therefore, the mean score for country Y was not 400. We're just restating the alternative hypothesis here.